All right, welcome everybody. Good to see you guys here. We're got a Illuvium town hall. We got Aaron Warwick here. I'm sure most of you know him. Kieran was supposed to be here, but he couldn't make it. He had something come up. So lucky for you guys, we have Aaron and TSG as well. So good to have everybody here. We got a lot of community questions posted in. We'll try and get through as many of those as possible. We also will take questions from the crowd. If you guys want to just click the raise hand button, we'll try to get you guys as soon as possible. But yeah, a lot of interesting stuff's been going on the past week. Here, hold on 1 second. Sorry. Oh, dog's barking.
Always dogs
Almost
and babies.
perfect. Yeah. So, yeah, it's been an interesting week, from everything going on. So, yeah, I think it was about time we needed to have another town hall, get some questions answered, maybe get some updates from Aaron on whatever you got going on, Aaron. I know it's a lot. So, yeah, maybe we can get started with like a general update on how things are going and what you've been working on personally, I guess.
So at the moment, we're trying to focus fairly heavily on the final scoping of like everything that we need to get into the public beta. I've been saying this for 2 years, but some people, I guess, hear what they want to hear sometimes, but that is that the public beta is not the perfect final build of the game. We will never have a perfect final build of the game. The whole purpose of this entire project is for it to be decentralized and grow over time with different games. So what that means is every time we add a new game, it adds more complexities in terms of the interactions between those games, which is definitely a good thing. It's what makes it end up being a little bit more like that open world MMO style without actually having an open world MMO. In some ways, it makes it better than that. And then obviously in other ways, it's a lot smaller in scope. But that's been the plan from the beginning. Anyone who's heard any of my interviews would know that I tend to use the phrase emergence and simplexity a lot, which basically just means build simple things. And then when those simple things interact with each other, they can sometimes arise with really fascinating and complex outcomes. So what we're trying to do is work out what is the bare minimum that we absolutely need to get the game off of the ground. Part of that is with obviously the different private betas that we're doing. We're very close to having what we would call private beta 2 for the overworld to come out. So you'll see an announcement about that very soon. And once that's done, there will be another private beta, we're just calling it private beta 3, which would be another update for the overworld and for Arena, which would include PvP. That would be the first time that people will be able to play against each other in arena mode, which is what it's always been about for that game from that perspective. So really it's about, taking all of the things that we need to do and calibrating that against like what is absolutely necessary. So we're still in the middle of building out the fuel pool, which has had, I don't know, about 10 different iterations of how it needs to be done based on being on layer 1, layer 2. Now there's the partnership between Polygon and IMX, which I think opens up some possibilities for us. But I get it that sometimes people just say when, and they sort of get this entitled feeling that, hey, I just want the game and just give me the game. I'm sorry, but what we're building is very, very complex and never been done before. So every once in a while, we'll come across something that either doesn't exist and we need to build it, or doesn't exist and we need to figure out how to build it. So that does take time, and it means that even though we have internal estimates from the devs and from the rest of the team, we can make mistakes, right? Sometimes it's based on something else that we're expecting to be built either by an external party or something else. Sometimes it's our own fault and we just miss the boat on it, and we get the estimates wrong. Sometimes we hire the wrong people and they're not able to keep up at the pace that we want to, right? This is just all of the natural facts of having such a large decentralized organization. It's very tough to have everybody be exactly cohesive on the same page when you're talking about a brand new startup all around the world building something that's never been built before. And sure, that may sound like excuses to a lot of people, but the fact of the matter is that it's the nature of what we're doing is very difficult, right? The good thing about it is that no one's following us, right? There's nobody out there that is trying to do anything close to what we're doing, which means that while it is risky and time consuming and difficult, when we get there, no one else around, right? If we can make a game that's just as fun to play as the average game that the average person plays, and then you add all of the benefits, the actual benefits of I guess the crypto promise, that's the game changer. That's that Game Boy moment where it's all well and good to talk about having portable games, but you need to have a good portable game to play. It's all well and good to talk about crypto games and the advantages of them, but you need something that people actually want to play. And it just takes time, and there's definitely going to be a feeling amongst the first people who play the game, which is, I guess, the people that are in this town hall listening now, that there's still room to improve once we go live, right? There's definitely going to be things like, if anyone says, well, oh my God, there was a bug today. Yep. I guarantee you that there's going to be bugs in the open beta. That's part of it being a beta. There's even bugs just in a normal game, and we will fix them. But the advantage of being early is there is a finite economy of a sort, and the people that are going to get in early hopefully can reap the rewards of that. And then once it goes a bit more mainstream, then they'll be in a really, really good position. That's the trade-off. If you go into it thinking, I don't want to put any money into Illuvium, I don't want to give any support, and on day one, I want to be a free-to-play player, and I want my experience to be absolutely perfect, not the game for you, right? That's not going to be how it works. There's definitely going to be some things to iron out, and we'll try to get it to be as good as we possibly can. But, I've never said to anyone that it's going to be the best game that ever exists. I just know that the promise of what it can be is so worth doing that I'm willing to spend almost every hour of my day trying to figure out how to make it a reality. And we've got a huge amount of people, 100 plus team members that also feel the same way, that are trying to achieve the same thing and helping out in whatever way they can. And they do absolutely everything that they can in their power to, make it a reality. And every once in a while, we've had a bad hire here or there where the person is either, not of that same mindset, or just for whatever reason has turned out to be, not at the same caliber that we sort of need. And we're trying to make sure that the team is efficient and, productive. Everything that you guys could want, being the, the business owners that you guys are, we're trying to make those things a reality. But the fact of the matter is that when you're talking about startups, sometimes things are a little bit off from perfect, and it can take a little bit of time, especially when the meat of your development comes right in the middle of not only a huge financial backlash, but also a cultural backlash that means that, half of the type of people that would be developers for our project absolutely hate the entire concept of the space that we're in, because they've seen people put massive amounts of money into complete scams and get, defrauded by them, and they got sick of it. You know, that right around the start of 2022, it just became very clear that for us getting on, you know, new devs that were interested in this space was going to be incredibly difficult, because 9 out of 10 interviews that we have is basically like, oh, you're a crypto game, then you're a scam, click, and that's the end of it. And I've been, since I've been in the space, I've been telling everyone, don't ape into a lot of this crap, because it's all magical thinking, and we can avoid it by only focusing on, you know, the good projects that have people that are genuinely interested in building something cool. And we didn't have that. We just had a whole bunch of people that felt like it was the perfect opportunity for them to put in $1 and get out 1,000, and that's unsustainable, right? And unfortunately, the ones that were the best at marketing their scams are the ones that took the most of the money out of the space. And I've said since the beginning, like, I wouldn't have invested in anything like us unless I knew us personally, because you can't be certain that the person on the other end of that, you know, call or YouTube video or screenshot or whatever is actually honest about, you know, building something for you. And you can look at my comments and everyone on the team's comments, our interaction, our leaks. You can see what we're doing, right? At this stage, it would be absolutely impossible for us to have done, like, the idea that we ever have had anything but, you know, good intentions for the project. What we're doing is way harder than scamming people, right? Like, way harder than doing a scam. Scams are easy. You saw a bunch of brain dead morons able to pull them off, and yeah, it doesn't take very long at all. What we're doing is, you know, the opposite of that. It's like putting a massive amount of time into something that at the end of the day is going to be very easily trackable when it comes to things like return on investment. You've seen it with the land, that all of the people that sold land where the use case for their land was, I don't know, it'll be amazing, just buy it and you'll be rich, they're the ones who got rewarded, because there were enough people that just went, oh wow, I want to be rich, I'm just going to ape into that without even thinking. And then when we say, hey, we're going to do something, here is how it connects into our project, this is what you can do, this is how the economy of the whole system works, it becomes trackable. It becomes something that people can actually analyze. And then people start to say, oh, well, what about this? And what about that? Or maybe, like, I wouldn't want to spend more than, you know, 5,000 on this, you know, whereas in other projects, it's like, I'll spend $100,000 on a piece of land because it's going to mean that Serena Williams will be my girlfriend. And it's just like, too good. You know, you can't, I guess, win by putting things in front of people that they can actually, you know, call you on. And, you know, we've been called a lot of times on our timelines and the value that we're adding, but at the very least, you're able to do it, right? You're able to speak to us. You're able to listen in on town halls, ask questions. You're able to analyze exactly what we're doing, because we're very open about it. You know, we're not secretive about anything. In the past, we said very specifically, after we missed a few deadlines, that people were much more agitated by us missing the deadlines, because they looked at them as ironclad promises in blood that we were saying, we guarantee it by this date. And, you know, we never said that. But then it became a little bit clear that no matter how much we broadcast, that the dates are something that we are striving to hit as a best case scenario, became something that people would read as, nope, you will absolutely do it, otherwise it's a scam if you're a day late. we missed the cinematic delivery by about 30 minutes or something because of a problem with the render, because we were literally getting it done last minute and people started to call it a scam, et cetera, et cetera. So that was our reaction to saying, hey, if this is causing so much agitation to people, then we are not going to put dates, because we're talking about a project that is ridiculously complex and no one can perfectly accurately estimate it. But it sounds like there's also people completely agitated by the fact that we are not giving external dates. And so, I mean, I guess the solution is to just go back to giving the best dates that we possibly can while giving the exact same disclaimers that we've always given. And the fact that we're much further along in the project with a much better understanding of what we need to build, we're much more confident in our dates. But, you know, if we were to say that, you know, tomorrow we were going to release something and then it comes out one day later, I just hope that there's enough people in the community to say, oh yeah, they probably caught some sort of a large bug last second. We're not like Nintendo, right? There's a new Nintendo game coming out, I believe, next month that has been finished completely with everything done for the last 5 months. But they can afford to do that. We can't sit on a game that's finished completely for 5 months. And therefore, when we talk about getting our deadlines done, we're talking about our quality control engineers are testing it up to, you know, the day before something is meant to go live. And that means that there's definitely going to be a little bit less accuracy with those dates. I hope people can understand it. I think a lot of people do, but there are definitely at the very least a small number of people that are very vocal, and that's fine. You can say whatever you want. I'm just letting you know that there are some fundamental realities to the situation that just screaming "I want a pony" does not always get you a pony, especially when the people trying to build that pony for you are working right up until the very last day, 7 days a week, etc. Sometimes, you know, that extra hoof has a bit of problems that you can't really predict beforehand, and you just got to roll with the punches. So that's basically where we're up to, and my thoughts in general on the matter. I'm happy to answer anyone's questions openly and honestly. I guarantee you there's going to be some people here who don't like my answers about various things, but hey, at least you know it's going to be, you know, my opinion and my honest opinion at that.
Yeah, that's good. There's a lot to unpack there, which you said. I had a couple things to say while you were talking about that for a minute.
Oh,
But I
sorry.
kind of, oh, it's fine. I was trying to think of them as you were going, but yeah, it was. I can't even remember. I was thinking while we were on the subject of PvP, but we can kind of move into questions. That's fine. No, it's a good update. Yes, it's. I was gonna say it's my first time ever working in a remote type job. So like you were talking about the, you know, those hurdles for that, and like for me personally, it's very odd, you know, like because there's like 3 of us in America, so or 4 maybe
It's
now,
very
but
hard, right? There's
yeah, I mean,
you
like
guys are
luckily I'm the
working.
minority, you know.
You're working at hours that are either very difficult to work out, or you're working at a time when a lot of other people are sleeping or whatever. I mean, for the first 2 years of the project, my solution for that was just, you know, I'm pretty good on 6 hours sleep. I'd say that's my like perfect amount of sleep, but I was working on about maybe 3.5 hours to 4 hours of sleep. And the rest of the time I was just at the computer ready to answer things. I mean, after we released staking, I was so nervous that there would be problems that I was literally up 24 hours a day for a few days trying to hope that there was no holes in the contract. And then after we found that there were holes that were very hard to sort of figure out, but came around about 6 months later, I was again like not sleeping at all, trying to make sure that we were ready to, you know, solve any issues that we had. And so the brute force solution has been my way of doing everything, which is just to be online a lot and just do a lot of stuff. And one of the transitions that we've had to do is when we were 50 people, I could manage almost everyone, no problems, right? I did it all by myself in terms of being the one who could communicate to everyone else the major goals of the project. When we got up past 200 people, that became very difficult. And it still is difficult. We definitely have a lot fewer people. We've removed a lot of the outsourcers once we were at a good enough place that we could take a lot of that work back internally. But it is very tough to be a brand new organization with a lot of people that fairly inexperienced to this type of work, but all over the world in the middle of a global sort of recession, so to speak. And there have been a lot of challenges, especially when 9 out of 10 people that you interview to bring onto the project say, nope, you're a scam. And their only interaction is that they saw a bunch of people get wrecked buying monkey pictures. They saw videos of lawyers saying, what the hell are they talking about? You don't get to, own every single piece of it. Just because you own, one picture doesn't make you some sort of like an art magnate or baron or whatever. And then all of a sudden there was just a massive sentiment turn against it. The people that are still here, I think, are the people that understand that there is something valuable about the blockchain, that idea of certainty, that idea about knowing the quantities of things, about knowing that what the contract says is effectively in stone, even though for us, a lot of them are upgradable via things like council stating things. But all of these things make me bullish that it is absolutely the right way to go into the future. Otherwise, I wouldn't be on the project at all. But it's only cool if you do it in some very, very specific ways, which may not, I'm not saying our way is the only way to do it. There's probably plenty, and there'll be some super smart people in the field that actually work out how to do it. But I feel like what's happened is we just came through the .com bubble, or at least we're just at the bottom of the bubble and like working our way back up. And there was a lot of scams where people were saying, www. And then whatever bullshit.com. And people believed it because they didn't understand the tech, and they said, hey, I'm an early mover. I like seeing new tech, but I'm not skilled enough to be able to know exactly what's good and what's bad. And they just go all in it. And a lot of people got smashed back then, and a lot of people got smashed this time around now. But I think what you'll find out of this one is a lot of people saying, prove your use case, prove why the thing that you were saying is going to be cool is actually going to be cool and revolutionary and something that people actually want to do. And that will mean that, the scam detectors will be way better this time around. And I don't think that there'll be a lot of projects funded that are in that sort of scam mentality, which is way better. It means that there'll be more funding allocated to the people that are actually dedicated to building. So I'm really looking forward to this next 5 years. And I just hope that the thought process that we have for building something that could be revolutionary is true. There's never a guarantee, but as I said, I wouldn't be on the project at all if I didn't feel like it had a future.
Yeah, that was one thing I was going to say earlier that you said was funny about like scams don't take a lot of work, like scams are gone quicker than you can, they're gone very quickly, yeah. If this was an elaborate scam, it would be the worst planned one ever.
It's absolutely, yeah. I could engineer a scam in a week and make a whole bunch of money, no problems. No one would ever know about it, but I would, and then I'd have to neck myself. So yeah, let's stick to actually making something that makes the world, more fun to live in.
Yeah, just give Chat GPT its alter ego and have it do it, right?
Not sure if it's that good yet, but I mean, it's a lot harder to pull off a scam now than it was, 2 years ago, but that's the nature. It's pretty cool seeing how many fewer people are getting smashed in our Discord. I used to absolutely hate, for many reasons, having people say, I just put my money to you and where's my NFT? I said, what do you mean? Don't send any money to me. And they're, oh no, but you sent me a message. And Yep, there's just millions of dollars going out to really, really easy scams. I don't see that anywhere near as often, which I think is a really positive sign. The other part of it is that that's money that could go towards, funding development or adding into the economy, or someone could be buying your, hollow RAM fire, but now it's, with some scammer in North Korea, and it's not good. So I'm definitely bullish about the future. I think that we've got a lot of work for us and the world in general over the next year or two, but I think there's some very cool things coming.
Yep, me as well. Okay, well, people are begging to get to questions now. We can go ahead and get
Sure.
started.
Are
We'll bring up.
we going through the questions that were listed, or are we just bringing people up?
I was gonna bring people up if they want to ask questions, and then if
Mhm.
nobody comes up, we'll start going through these questions here.
Sure.
But I know Scoot had something already, so let's go ahead and bring
Easy.
Scoot up first. Scoot, how's it going?
Good. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks for coming to take the time to talk with us, Aaron. It's always good to hear from you. I had a couple questions that I thought were going to be for Kieran, more financial side stuff, but since he's not here, they'll wait. I do have a question for you. In the Overworld new beta that we're going to be coming up, is that going to be pushing any updates towards the combat engine that might show in Arena, like the new changes towards dominant synergies
Oh, yes.
for
Yeah.
hybrids?
Yep.
And is it also going to push any new Illuvials?
Yes. So part of the fact, like, this is one of the things that's a little bit weird by having, say, private beta 2, meaning overworld and so on and so forth, is technically from the game engine perspective, they are the same game. When we originally did the first arena beta, what we did was effectively just comment out your ability to play overworld, right? So when that first beta came out and you guys were starting to play survival mode, there was a lot of code that you were downloading that was about being able to go and play all of the regions. They were just disabled. Part of this means that when we do an update for Overworld, it would be incredibly complex for us to not include that other stuff. So everything that the guys in Arena are doing is going to be in there, except if we've effectively like commented it out. So for Overworld PB2, we will not give you the ability to play PvP, even though it exists there at the moment. And the main reason for that is because there's some definite back-end work that needs to do that we couldn't have it go live. It would be too unstable. People would be too unhappy with it. It's okay for us testing internally, but for testing to the community, we just need to get those pieces finished. And that has taken a lot longer than what we originally thought. Otherwise, the original plan was for both of these to release at the same time. So while Ascendant mode will be effectively like grayed out, you won't be able to use it, all of the combat engine will be updated to be used in Overworld. It's just way easier for us to do that. So the simplified synergy system will be in there. The new visualization system will be in there. The optimizations that we've done for performance will be in there. All of the new Illuvials will be there. All of the balance changes. There's a bunch of things in there that will be the case. Probably so much so that I think when we release it, survival mode will be a little bit broken, at the very least based on balance, and maybe even more. So I guess I apologize about that. But that's the quickest way for us to get it out. It would be a big waste of time for us to spend a lot of time separating those two out. At some point, they will be separated out because the long-term plan is not for Overworld and Arena to be linked. In fact, Arena will be effectively a headless system where you have a game launcher and it does all of the menus and game modes and putting you into the queue and stuff like that. And then Arena will just effectively pop up with you in a match, right? There won't be a game of Arena where you go in and you'll see a menu or anything like that. It'll be a completely headless system. So eventually they'll be split, but you'll get a lot of things in PB2 that are part of the updates to the Arena combat engine. Just keep in mind that there's definitely going to be some level of breakage there, because we're currently focused on making sure that all the guys working on Arena are balancing around Ascendant mode, which will be our premier mode for balance. And then what will happen after that, after we release Ascendant mode, is that then we will go back. We'll obviously build Leviathan, which should be very quick because it's almost identical to the Ascendant mode. But we'll go back and start working on Survival, which, by the way, is only V1. And there's 3 levels of progression that we want to build out Survival to be like a really engaging thing. At the moment, it's just so that we could test out a really complicated combat engine to make sure that we could eventually get to the point of it being a cinematic battler.
Awesome.
All right. I'm excited to get my hands on the new features. Thanks for the answer.
No problem.
Cool. Thanks for coming up, Scoot. Okay. Well, just while we're on the topic of PvP, because we have a few questions that were sent in about PvP. How long, time-wise, should the average PvP match take? Or what are we aiming for?
We're currently targeting like a very fast match being somewhere around about 8 minutes, and like an average match somewhere around, I think, like 12, 13, and long matches maybe going 15, 20 minutes, something like that. Obviously, there's a little bit of tweaking to go, but in general, we want it to be somewhat similar to the cadence of playing like a 3/0 chess match, where you pop into a match, you very quickly see the opponent's deck, come up with a strategy in your mind about what you're going to play first. You have a battle, you adjust, you have a battle, you adjust, you have a battle. Boom, 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 boom. I'm always pushing for that planning phase to be like super short, right? Now, it'll probably be something, I don't know if people have played TFT, but when they put stuff out in beta, they actually have longer rounds of planning. And then when it goes live, the first 2 weeks, they actually have longer rounds because people are new and working it out. The eventual idea for me is that part of the advantage of being a good player is to be able to quickly synthesize that information rather than being able to, put it into a spreadsheet, play some numbers, do all sorts of things, wait an hour, and then say, yes, I've got the exact perfect battle. We want it to be not chaotic, but a little bit more exciting. And I think that that means that it'll be somewhere around about like 15, 20 seconds of time to place your units onto the board. It doesn't feel good to sit there and wait for say a minute while you've already got your stuff out there and your opponent is, thinking, and, you get pretty impatient these days if something takes longer than 3 seconds. So we want there to be much faster pace.
Nice. Yeah, I've tested a little bit, and I beat one of our team members who's very good at the game, or very good at TFT at least, So it was but it was yeah, I think we did around like 5 matches and 20 minutes each about. But that was also without a time limit, and I probably took longer than I should have, so
It'll come down, but I think 20 minutes would be considered a pretty long match for us, which I think is in the sweet spot of, our ADHD rural population.
very short attention spans.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, thank you. The next question, tournament formats. Will that be available when PvP launches?
No. So the difference between a queue and tournament mode is we're willing to accept that there will be errors, bugs, and things like that that can sometimes mean that, hey, I should have won, and I got screwed over by Aaron, etc., etc. For the purposes of ranked queue, But tournaments are a little bit different because, you know, it tends to mean that there's going to be prizes there. As people have seen from our sort of approach with Illuvium Beyond, is that we wanted to have snapshots to be able to give rewards to people for that. And we had to push it back a little bit because it wasn't, you know, there were some exploits that would have made it a little bit easy for people to do things. Again, a lot of people super pissed off about that, but at the end of the day, what really matters to us is making sure that there's some level of competitive integrity to these things. So tournaments will definitely not be there, just purely because if we had a tournament and there's like big game breaking bugs, it's a lot bigger of a deal than just, man, I lost an individual match and I lost a few ratings points because, you know, it could be that we reset everybody's rating after a month of testing things out post the public beta being live. So yeah, we're always looking out to try and make the game like have a decent amount of competitive integrity, because without that, you lose those top players, and without those top players, you lose that top-down engagement from influencers and things like that. So you can't have it be buggy and then, you know, someone gets a giant tournament prize. So it won't be there.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. Let's go ahead and bring one of these community members up. It looks like Two Hayes is next. If we could just keep the questions to one question, so we can try and get through as many of these as possible. But yeah, I'll go ahead and bring up Two Hayes. Okay. Two Hayes, your mic is muted.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Hey, yep, we can hear
Hey.
you.
All right, quick question, man. I just want to say I appreciate all the hard work that everyone's doing, and I look forward to the game. So, I see we got a bunch of things going on. Is Arena and Overworld like, is that going to be the main scheme, or do you think the team's spread too thin in the work, or how do you feel how the work platform is going with everything?
So obviously the original goal was to have Illuvium Zero be a mini game, but it represents an opportunity for us to have a game that really should exist in our ecosystem that acts as a core piece. So while that one was originally very small team members, as in like we had 2 people working on it only, and a couple of the art people doing part-time on it, we have since upped that a little bit. It's still a very small team, but we've put a few more resources into that. Most of the rest of the people working on the project are working on something to build out either Arena or Overworld. That's the vast majority of the people on the project. There are people working on things like the merch store, and I guess some people might say, well, you know, that doesn't get us to launch. And it's true, it doesn't. It's not even part of the sort of road to open beta. It's something that we definitely want to do, and it's very far advanced. But outside of the producers and some of the web people, it is not taking away from Overworld and Arena in any sort of a way. Even things like our back end team and stuff like that are not working on that. We're using a like external system that allows us to get that up to speed a lot quicker. There's the website and the Illuvidex that, in my opinion, are a fairly integral part of the experience. Website itself has been something that has had very little work on it at all throughout the entirety of the project, but staking V2, all of the like staking V3 and all of these things do take some resources, but without staking, it's very hard to have the game go live in any sort of appreciable way. So while there are other projects going on, the vast majority of the work goes towards Overworld and Arena, with a little bit going towards Illuvium Zero. We would love to be able to get more people on Illuvium Zero. Probably the biggest time sink of people that could have been working on stuff for, say, Arena was Illuvium Beyond. But one of the things to remember is even though they're working on Illuvium Beyond, when you look at what Illuvium Beyond is from a technical perspective, it's almost identical to a lot of the things that we do in the overworld. So it had to be done. The ability for us to safely take your stuff and throw it in the garbage and give you a new thing, which is always exactly the right thing based on what you've combined together. When we're talking about it in Illuvium Beyond, it's called bonding, but in the overworld, it's called forging, and it's the exact same technology. So as much as we did have people working on those things, the real point was that there is a way to build out a whole bunch of the systems that we need in a way that allows us to do something that is definitely less complex than the full thing, and it allows us to make it as a stepping stone. So
Awesome.
from an outsider's perspective, I've had people say, well, you know, why do Illuvium Beyond? It's just a complete waste of time. It's definitely not. There's definitely a place for it in our ecosystem. And I'd say about 50% of the work of that, maybe more, is stuff which will be directly used by either Overworld or Arena to do things like, you know, looking up your deck and all of the
Right.
things that go into the blockchain side of it. So I'm glad we did it. The original plan was for it to take a lot less time, and that's where the failure on our part is, that it ended up taking a lot more time than what we had expected it to. But I'm absolutely not at all apologetic of creating the project because I very specifically designed it in a way that it would allow us to test a whole bunch of things that we didn't have an answer for and really needed one for.
Well, I'm very happy with the progress, and I look forward to the progress of what's to happen. And that's very comforting hearing that you're not spreading the team too thin. And man, this is a extremely exciting project, and I'm happy to be a part of. And yeah, just thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for the hard work, and I look forward to hearing more. And yeah, man, you answered my question to the T. So thank you very
Yep,
much for your time.
All right.
no
Thanks,
problem.
2A's.
One
And we
one
got
thing to keep in mind is the amount of mind space it takes to be able to manage. Like internally, we have 19 active products being developed. Some of them are products that are used only internally by our team that are required to make the other work go the way that it should, et cetera, things that you guys never see. But with the team that we have and it being all decentralized, that's really tough. And that's probably the biggest mistake that we made, is in having an idea that required just like genius levels of being able to coordinate all of the different pieces. And so what will happen in the future is, like, we have not made any new projects for a very long time. And once we get out the beta, we will focus almost exclusively on upscaling the features of all of the games that we have initially to get them out to be what we would consider to be like a full game. And then we will build just one game after that. And that'll be one game built on the back of a whole ecosystem that has had a lot of the problems solved for it. And that'll be so much easier than the current state, which is that, you know, there might be 50 unknowns and 30 of those unknowns depend directly on each other. And it just explodes in complexity. And anyone who's worked with us on the project knows, I mean, it's even hard to like onboard people onto the project to get them to understand things. I still will have meetings with people that have been on the project for a year, and they'll ask me a question, I'll explain it, and they'll be like, whoa, I didn't know that we were doing that, or I didn't know that that was going to be how this will work. That's so cool. It's like, yeah, because, you know, you're going 100% on building out that one thing. Very hard for you to be expected to look back and read over 3,500 pages of other documentation to sort of fully understand the system. I would say that probably Johnny is the only person on the project that fully gets all of it. And that's a testament to just how smart that guy is. Yeah, I don't
I
think
will
there's anyone else that fully knows what's going on everywhere.
Yeah, I will say, like that was one thing I was going to bring up earlier. I've been internal now, like for a year, just over a year now. And so if that was a jab at me, I'll take it. But
Not a jab at anyone. It's
no, I know
absolutely.
I'm messing with you. But
It's very hard.
yeah, before I try to ask you like any questions internally, I'm always like, just search the documents because I'm sure Aaron wrote it down somewhere. If it's a thing, it's written down somewhere.
Yeah, I
So
want to make it clear to anyone that if I say you're not Johnny, that is absolutely not an insult. There's only one Johnny.
yeah. All right. Who do we got next? Manchas. We'll invite you up. Just a reminder, let's try to stick to one question. We got a lot of questions here. And you're on mute.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. Hope you're great. Thank you very much for giving me this space. English is not my main language. I'm from Argentina. Hello, Sam Withers too. Big fan here. Hope you're fine too. So, Aaron, you are saying really good stuff. I mean, I think the majority here would probably agree that you got our attention pretty hard, right? That's nice. That's really nice. I believe we all appreciate your time here, Aaron, Taryn, and Rich. So, Aaron, believing that you won't have any challenges would be like a super twisted way of being optimistic, right? Of course, you'll have challenges, and I hope you think that too, because if not, well, my question here wouldn't make any sense. So, I want to ask you, can you tell me, tell us a very difficult challenge that you believe that you will have in the short term? I mean, let's say 1 year from now, it could be like onboarding people from Web2 or attracting them, or something of the bugs you were mentioning, or PvP itself, or whatever you believe that will be like super big challenge. And
Yep.
very
So
much in advance.
probably the biggest challenge at the moment is going to be to build the fuel pool in a way that helps the economy overall in a way that we sort of made a mistake with SILV. There's a lot of help that we've had internally from economists to work out how that will go. And every time we've spoken to them, they've said, yep, what you're suggesting makes sense and it's good and it will work. So the reason why I'm scared about that is because the fuel pool is something that we thought up a long time ago, and the concept of it has not really changed. And it's a bit like the Monty Hall problem. You don't expect to be right the first time around, and you expect that there's going to have to be a lot of changes to things as you realize how it fits in with so many other pieces in such a large and complex project. And so when you get, say, 18 months down the line and someone says, yeah, your initial thought was actually the spot on correct one to go ahead with, it just brings warning bells in my head massively, because you're probably wrong about something, right? There's got to be something that we're missing. And with SRV, I saw it from the beginning, but because I was not like super into the crypto space before, I had to leverage off of a lot of other people that were not just inside of the team, but also people outside of the team who said that this would be a good thing for the project. And I just had to say, okay, there's no problems. Then it turns out that there are some big problems with it. I mean, obviously the biggest problem that we had with SRV2 was the leak, and I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about the general idea of it from the perspective of what it gives to the community. Ideally, what SRV2 should give is people should be like seeing everyone claim SRV and then realizing that instead of 9,862,273, there's now, one less one less ILV that could ever be in circulation. And they should be celebrating that because that effectively increases the price of the token, right? It should, right? In all theory. But what ends up happening is it dilutes some of the buying power because now people can buy using a token that they claimed early and all of that stuff that I mentioned 2 years ago. But the downsides were supposed to be leveraged by the upside of the token just being more valuable because of that. And I would say that there's probably less than 0.25% of people that are looking at that seriously and saying, wow, right, the burn rate of ILV is good, and so therefore it's like bullish for the token. No one cares, right? No one's looking at that level of analysis. So it's sort of like you get the punishment side of it, but you don't get the reward side. With the fuel pool, there's a lot of things that could happen there to, make it not ideal, right? I mean, we could easily have a system where we just say, nope, you just buy everything from us. There's no Illuvidex, there's no whatever. And that system would be so easy. Everyone has done that since the beginning of time, and we know it works, but it only works in the context of a system where there's some company running it. And what we want is to have a living, breathing system that is run by the aggregate of all of the people that are interacting with it. That's the eventual goal, is to have the Illuvidex be this economic engine that is totally out of our control and is a combination of all of you guys buying and selling and all of these different things. And so I'm certain that there will be challenges around that. We're now looking at building it in a way that will need a lot of testing and stuff like that. It's like the fuel pool itself is fairly simple, right? The math is, while it's complex for people that didn't do math, it's fairly trivial for, people much smarter than me. So that side of it should be really easy. But the way that people interact it, like, again, the exploits are something that people are really good at finding. And we need to make sure that that is something that is really, really solid and doesn't have these unintended consequences like we had with SRV. So I'd say that will be a big challenge. Like I said, every person that I've spoken to has said, yep, great job, that'll work, it's really cool. I don't believe them. I think that there's definitely something that I am missing with it, and I'm going to keep on going until I find it. I've spoken to people about, like, there was originally like 5 big things that were keeping me up at night all of the time, and we've slowly solved all of them. I believe that is the last one left. I had one that we came up with an answer for just a few days ago that was related to the story part of it, which again kept me up because I like things to have a story related reason for it. It was in relation to set 2 and set 3 and set 4. And we had a story-based reason to get to set 2. We didn't have we didn't have a reason to get to set 3 or 4. And originally it was, I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. But the back of my head was thinking, you have to solve this, right? Like, no one else is going to solve it. No one else is thinking about it on the project. It's got to come down to you. You got to get this right. Otherwise, it's going to ruin it, and then it'll be all your fault. And I think I've come up with something that I'm really happy with. I've told a few people internal about what that would be, and it wouldn't just solve set 2. It would actually explain set 3, 4, 5, 27, a million. And that feels really good. I actually have slept a lot better the last 2 nights for having, I think, solved that. You guys might find that the story element of it is a complete pile of crap, and I'll just have to wait and see. But I think we're pretty close to having no like huge hurdles. We're looking at exactly how we're going to integrate our account system with IMX passports, which is going to be obviously a technical challenge, but most of the smart people on the team seem to think that even though not all of that is finalized, that will be okay. So big challenges are small. I'd say the fuel pool is probably the biggest one of them. Originally, my biggest issue with the fuel pool was that we were going to do it on layer 1 and it was going to be expensive. There was going to be gas fees. And the only reason why it was working out okay is because, you know, the price of everything was $1 billion and spending $10 to do some transaction wasn't a big deal. Now spending $10 is a massive deal. But with this new IMX system that's they're rolling out, I think we can make it be like super cheap and intuitive and customer driven, and we won't have to worry about the prices or anything. These are all very cool things, but when you get a lot of those cool things together, you start to think, shit, so what if someone finds an exploit? And sometimes I know if a system is completely unexploitable because you can make it like provably so. I don't have that level of confidence with the fuel pool, so I guess we'll just have to keep working at it.
All right. Thank you, Manchas, for the question.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I like that one.
Thanks. Thanks you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Keep taking some of these community ones because it's covering a lot of the written in ones anyways. So let's bring up Sneaky Poke.
Hey guys.
Hey, how you doing?
Great. So we haven't heard much about megacities in a while. Will it be live by the time open beta hits? And as a shameless request coming from a guy who owns 4 connected plots that isn't a square, can we get an update on the definition of a megacity since not all cities are squares?
So the answer is no. Megacities won't be live. Megacities is an expansion, so I would say something like, you know, live combat in the overworld is on the borderline of what we would call an expansion, because it's like always been planned since we moved to having it be a 3D game as like an endscape and an end state, and Arena being able to sort of patch that was sort of always planned. That would mean that I would say like maybe in the overworld that would not be considered an expansion, but megacities is very, very specifically an expansion, which means that we are going to get everything working well with the current state where you can be doing everything in the fuel pool, et cetera, et cetera. That will be going for a decent amount of time, and we want everyone to be loving it, happy, it's got its economy running, et cetera, et cetera. Only then would we look at adding megacities. As far as like getting a definition of what a megacity is, I can't say for certain, but I would say that the most likely case is that having contiguous plots is not enough, and they have to be in a particular geometric configuration. The reason why I'm hedging my bets a little bit on this is because there's an obvious answer if something is true that I want to do, and there's another obvious answer if I don't get my way on a particular thing, and that particular thing is very hard to do and I can't bring it up now. But if what I get done gets done, then the answer would be very specifically no. You have to have a particular geometric configuration, which would almost certainly be a square. And so as much as like you probably don't want my thing to go ahead, because if you've got plots that are like in a line or something like that, my system will mean that you'll never get your long megacity. All I can say is that if my system goes in, it would be because not just me, but a whole bunch of other people agree that it's worth putting in. And at that point, I would say it'll be such a better game that there'll be more people playing and more people investing and all sorts of things that you probably won't give too much of a damn about whether or not you've got long plots, because they'll hopefully be a lot more valuable at that point anyway.
Fair enough. Thanks.
Cool. Thank you very much, Sneaky Poke. It's actually funny you're talking about the cities and lines. I don't know what I saw about like some future city that they were talking about building, like super long, straight super cities.
Yeah, yeah, that looks very cool.
Yeah,
But
I don't remember where I saw that, but
their scope is a little bit bigger than us, so expect delays.
yeah, right. Don't give us a roadmap on that. Well, actually, on that subject, have you seen the roadmap? Can we still expect that this week?
I don't. I mean, I've obviously I see.
Yeah.
But there's the problem with a roadmap is that if we were to release one right now, there would be some percentage of certainty around some of it, and then less certainty around other pieces. If people can understand that we could show an overall thing and say this bit is uncertain because there's a little bit of technology that we have to build for it, then I'd be fine with opening it up. But I will reiterate for the millionth time, there have been so many times we've been very clear about things and people just read whatever they want. So that's my fear, is that we put out something and someone says, oh, great, that's an absolute guarantee. It's been written into the blockchain that we will get this on exactly this date. And that's not the case. So I'm pushing back on it being released today. I would rather it be released next week or the week after, when we've had enough time to scope out just a couple of other things that we're looking at doing. If I get voted down on that, then what will happen is we will put out that there is some level of uncertainty around the estimates of some of the pieces, because there's interdependencies that can push other things back. But yeah, putting a big picture that has words on it has always been a little bit of a difficulty, because people don't read the words part. And I know a lot of people get annoyed at me for saying that, but hey, we've been proven right a lot of times that people don't read, and I'm just always going to be scared of that after how many times it's led to problems.
Yep, fully understandable. Okay, let's get Jimberino up here. He was next. I'm trying to get through as many as you can, and you just let me know if you need to go early, Aaron. I know it's already over an hour, but I don't know how much time you have exactly.
For this, I have plenty of time. So
okay, perfect.
I'll just answer them, and how it goes. We can go for another hour if need be. I mean, at some point I need to get back and do the work, but I had a really good sleep last night, so staying up until 2 a.m. instead of 12 will be very easy for me today. So it's not a problem.
Good deal. All right, well, Jimberino, how you doing?
Hello, sir.
I'm good. W's in the chat, boys. So I just have 3 quick questions. No, I'm joking. In the overworld, when the open beta comes out, we're only gonna have 3 or 4, correct?
It depends on whether or not you consider Sanctum Mesa to be an unlockable region. There'll be 3.
Okay.
There'll be 3 regions plus Sanctum Mesa.
So with that, in those regions, are we only going to be able to get those Illuvials? And then when the regions are released, are you gonna release one at a time and then unlock those Illuvials as the region?
So there's a bit of nuance to this answer, but number one, when the game first goes live, you will only have access to one region, right? We will very quickly open up another region. It will be completely finished to the point of it being an open beta state. So that will be Crimson Waste is the first one that will be available. And then we hope, at least what we're planning for, fairly soon after, someone will unlock either Brightland Steppes or Abyssal Basin. We've chosen those regions because we can get by with not needing to fudge the numbers too much on it to make it so that all of the alluvials that are available are available in the right sort of ratios. But at the end of the day, it's people that will be unlocking the regions. So it could be that it's a week, 2 weeks before the next region goes live. We'll hopefully have the math correct so that it's in the sort of expectation that we think it should be. So it'll be fairly quick after that. But I would imagine that there probably could be, say, a week where you've only got access to Crimson Waste. It'll depend. And there'll even be a period of 24 hours where someone is going to have access to it by themselves if they want. So that's kind of cool, but we will adjust the numbers a little bit, right? It doesn't do the game any favors to have too large of a discrepancy between the different affinities in the game. So therefore, there will probably be some sort of adjustments that are needed where, like, once we get region 4 and 5 and 6, you'll start to see a much smoother situation where if you go into Crimson Waste, you'll be much more likely to find fire alluvials and things like that. Whereas when the game goes live, you can imagine that while fire alluvials might be a little bit more seen in Crimson Waste, it'll probably be less so than what you'll find once a few regions are live. And if it was a single player game, wouldn't matter at all. We would lock it in place, and you'd have a fire region that you can go to, and mostly there'll be fire stuff, and then you'd find all the different regions and stuff. But these are the limitations that we have in building out a game where you're playing communally with so many other players. That's one of the advantages of single player games, is you can have an experience tailored to you. In Illuvium, you're sort of like, you're a speck in a large ocean of players, and you've got to try and find your own little niche here or there to, make your way. And like, that's really cool, but it just means that there's some areas where it's going to be a little bit off to begin with. I guess my point is, when you go into Crimson Waste, you'll be like, why is there like 15% water alluvials in here? This doesn't really make any sense. And it's more because if we didn't do that, then very soon the early fire alluvials would become a lot harder to capture and a lot sort of more rare, and like there's a few skewing things there. But I guess the large takeaway from that is that, number one, when I say 3 regions, there's absolutely only going to be one region available, and that region will be available not because of anything you guys do. It'll be for some other reason that region will be unlocked. But after that, up to you guys what happens.
Okay, so the numbers are going to be bumped up for like water alluvials and Crimson. There's not going to be like an unlocking period for alluvials.
For a little while, until we get a decent amount. It's really after about the 4th region that we can probably make it a little bit more steady. Like there's a reason why Abyssal Basin was chosen, basically, because it can have a few of the different types and feel good. And yeah, whereas Crimson Waste is supposed to be one of those. We have 5 regions, which are sort of like considered affinity regions, where there's a very strong one, and then we have 2 regions which are a bit like anyone, like you'll see anything in them. And for reasons that I can't go into, one of those sort of like even regions can't be in the first 4 that we have, and so therefore it forces our hand on a couple of other things. Outside of that, up to you guys.
All right, I appreciate it. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Rich.
No problems.
Thanks, Jimbo. There's a little bit more than one. Okay, we love Jimbo. Okay, let's see. Oh, actually, while we're on that subject, one of the written in questions about PB2 for Overworld, will the leveling system be enabled in that at that point?
No, not for PB2. I would love to tell people that leveling will be in there, but there's just a little bit more that needs to be done in Arena for that to be possible. And it's not. So like the general idea is that when you go into PB2, you'll have access to 3 regions. So Crimson Waste, Abyssal Base, and Brightland Steppes. You will have access to all of the new Illuvials that we're integrating into the game. You will have a backend connection. So all of the stuff will be through our backend, which will solve a lot of the crashes where things were a little bit local and a little bit not. They'll have access to has the community. I haven't been keeping up with the leaks. So I'm going to type something to you, Rich, and you can tell me whether or not the community have seen this. Have they?
Yeah, I am 99% sure they have.
Okay. So you'll have
Yeah.
access to the morphopods, which are sort of like a little bit of a consumable system that will interact between Illuvium 0 and Overworld. It'll also have some implications for Arena, but not as much. We have the new overload mechanics. So people who've played Arena will know that the battle boards can overload over time. And what people probably don't realize is that so can the obelisks themselves, and people can theorize as to why that is. But so you'll get the overload mechanic, which is effectively a way of. This was something that Grant came up with, which I thought was super cool. I gave him like these ideals of like what we would need to have in the world. The general idea is that we want it to be exciting, but people need to remember that it is still at its heart so that it can't be exploited a pack of cards. So we didn't want it to be like really skill based and have like the top players be able to take out, say, 10 cards, and a weak player only is able to take out 1 card, because even though that might sound interesting for someone to deal with, it's going to be a demotivational factor for a lot of people, and they won't play the game. And that's like not buying cards in packs and buying them off of the marketplace is all well and good, but because we have tied a lot of the gameplay to this pack opening experience, wouldn't be good for us. So we needed something that would be exciting, while at the same time, if you took your time and sort of paid for it in time, you could be just as good as a top level player. So if you're a top level player and you want to finish a run of a region in, say, 10 minutes or 15 minutes, like go for it, do it. And that's fine, but you better be like really skillful, because at a certain point, the region will overload and you'll have a lot less space to travel in, and that'll make it much more difficult. If you just want to take your time, you can do all of your scans, you can look around, you can spend 3 hours in there, plan out every little detail, and maybe even get a better haul than the really skillful players that want to do it quickly, because you're willing to spend 3 hours there compared to them spending 15 minutes. And then there'll be everyone in between, right? Some people would be like, I want to do it reasonably quick, or, I'm probably the extreme case where I'm the sort of guy who walks around and does all of the side quests and then kills the boss with 1 punch. And then there's other people that get in there and die to the boss 50 million times until they eventually get the skill to beat him while wearing a pot on their head. So, we want to cater for a lot of different, things in there. And the overload mechanic, I think, is a really good and simple way of covering all of that. You'll get the new movement mechanics of sliding and gliding that they've seen. You'll get the environmental movement mechanics, which is the lily pads and the bubbles, and a whole bunch of quality of life improvements. So it'll feel really good, but it's still not the full game. And like for that reason, I don't think that we're expecting people to just be like addicted to it, play it for 1 million hours. once we get leveling, then it will start to get really addictive, but it's only when it connects in with Arena and you get your own real stuff that the real crack starts to, form at this. And I'm not talking about, holes in things. I'm talking about drugs.
All right. Yo. Does that have to do with the pot helmet too?
Well, I think that guy is pretty cracked out. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe that's a bit of both.
All right. All right. Let's bring up Mealstorm. Invited you on stage, Mealstorm. If you are here. Nope, he took his hand down. Okay.
Maybe I
Bitcoin
just answered his
Berserker?
question.
Yep, quite possible. How's it going?
Hello, can you hear me?
Hey.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, first of all, my first language is not English, so I apologize if I speak wrong, something like that. And just to make it quick, my question was taking a look to the prices of the discs. Do you guys have like a certain range for the prices for the traveling in the stage 1, stage 2, or stage 3? Like, are you expecting, I don't know, stage 1 to be around the disc standard, like $8? We have like any topic on that?
This goes a little bit back to the fuel pool. My thought from the very beginning, I'm a big believer that if you can set up fair systems, that market forces are the best way to run. It's nothing to do with my politics, but anarchy is something that I've always loved. The problem is that anarchy in the real world has a lot of problems and challenges that we don't have to deal with in games, right? So when you get to a game, having anarchy and effectively just simple systems that everyone is even in, there's no propping up, there's no setting prices and stuff like that. I find them to be super interesting. I guess a lot of the economists that we've spoken to have also found it super interesting because it's not the sort of thing that they can do in real life all that often. So if my way of thinking goes ahead, and again, I don't get to make all of these decisions, so I'm only speaking for me here. If what I want done happens, then we will set a price for actions in terms of fuel. There will be a pool that will have all of those fuels together. There will be some actions that will require certain fuels, others require different ones. And then there will be a fourth category, which is actions that can use any of the fuels. That last one is our way of keeping the system balanced, because we don't want there to be arbitrage in the system. We don't want people outside of the system to be leaking money out of it by being able to buy and sell. So this is some of the reasons why I say that the restrictions that we place on the fuel pool are very complex and deep. But if that goes ahead, the idea would be that at launch, let's just, for example, say that we set the price to be 1 Krypton is equal to 1 ETH. Right now, I don't think that'll actually be the case. It'd probably be a much smaller amount, but just for the sake of argument, let's say that it was that. Then let's say that there was a bunch of people in Illuvium 0 that were like, yeah, we love that price, 1 Krypton per ETH. I'm all for it. I'm going to sell every bit of fuel that I have onto the pool because I think that's a great price. I'll sell it all along. That will instantly dip the price of that. And since it'll be fixed at, some action is just one Krypton, the cost of doing that action has come down rapidly, right? And it may keep on coming down as the demand for doing the action is lower than the supply of fuel that goes into it. At some point, they will find an equilibrium where there's an equal amount coming into the system as going out of the system, and that will determine the price. Now, we have suggested that there could be a rails system every economist that I've ever spoken to has said that that is a terrible idea. The only reason why we put it into that initial IIP was because there was a lot of, I would say, lay people in the community saying, no, it has to be a fixed price or no one will play the game. I fully disagree with that. I think that there is not a human on this planet that doesn't understand fluctuating prices. And if it is marked in there as like a planned feature of the whole project, then it actually generates more interest than doing it the other way. Gamers will go in and they'll say, there's a bunch of free actions that I can do. There's a bunch of games that I can play that don't require me to spend any money. It doesn't cost you any money to go in and play a round of Arena. It wouldn't cost you any money to go in and play a cart-based game or a dating simulator or whatever. So they will look at the price of the fuel for things in the overworld and say, do I want to do this today? No, it's too high. Right? So I'll go do these other things. And then they come back a day later and everybody else has had the same idea as them that, nope, we're not doing that. And the people in the Illuvium Zero side are probably similar minded. So they're thinking, hey, fuel is expensive. It's good for me to sell it. I don't want to stockpile it. I want to sell it right now. That will instantly drop the price down to that equilibrium. And then, Tuesday rolls around and people go, yeah, now the price is good. I'm going to buy a bunch more fuel, and it will go up and down. And the only input that I would like to have is through expansions to Illuvium Zero and expansions to the game world. That is something that is fair and reasonable for us to build into the systems. What I don't think is good or fair or reasonable is for us to arbitrarily say, this is how much something should be. When it comes to money and what people think something is worth, I mean, that is an absolutely shit way of doing it. And the only reason why most of society views things that way is because they don't have a way to automatically market it. If Apple could, come up with some sort of a system whereby, the price of iPhones fluctuates depending on demand, and they didn't have to do anything with it, they'd make more money. But like being able to fluctuate the prices of them on a daily basis in a way that doesn't look like collusion and stuff like that is very hard. We get the advantage. It's the blockchain. We set it, we forget it. It does what it does, and it's designed to be that way. So I'm always in favor of no rails. I'm always in favor of things being reasonably good value. I think that most people are in favor of it being reasonably valued. I don't think that you could ever get it to the point where it would be like $1,000 for a trip, unless some crazy things are happening where there's like 1 billion people wanting to play the game and we don't have enough time to build out some expansion. And people were paying $999 just the day before. That's, I guess, what people don't understand is the only way it gets to a price that people don't like is if a whole bunch of other people do like that price. That's the beauty of it. Whereas if we just set a price, well, it doesn't move, it stays there. And some people are going to say, screw that, I don't like the price. Other people are going to say, hey, I would have paid way more for it, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, I think it's much better to have things run by market forces outside of our control.
Okay, thank you. I actually agree with you in that part. So thank you. That was my question.
No problems.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Who do we got next? Crypto Womble. I sent you the invite to come up, Crypto Womble. Yep, there you go. Just unmute and you're good to go. Maybe. I think we had an issue last time with him unmuting. Well, we can. I'll just go into this other question until he figures it out, but we'll leave him up here. Somebody asked about integrating socials still into like the social aspect for players. Like, how do you see that coming to light still?
Sorry,
Will
the
it be
social
something?
aspect?
Yeah, like players chatting and
Mhm.
that
Yeah,
sort
I
of
can
thing.
I can talk about that. I mean, it's pretty obvious. It's very similar to most games. There will be a chat system which is built into your account, but probably the history of your chat will be local onto whatever device it is that you're on. But you will have guilds, you will have private messages to your friends and other people, and then you will have local chat. When you do guild chat, anyone in your guild will be able to see it, just like 9 billion other games. Very easy. You'll just click guild, see the messages start scrolling up, and you can type, and you guys can all have some fun. If you're doing it privately, you'll be able to sort of like use a / command to pick the username of the person you want to speak to, or just reply to the last person, etc., and you'll be able to send messages privately to them. Only they will see it. And then, depending on the game, you'll have local chat. So both Overworld and Arena will have local chat. Illuvium Beyond, if it ever got a card game, would have local chat. Illuvium 0 won't for a while, although for the sake of simplicity, it probably will, and it'll just be useless. You'll just be talking to yourself. But that will allow anyone that's, I guess, in the proximity to be able to hear what you're talking about. That obviously means a different thing in Overworld compared to in Arena. In Arena, it's obviously pretty simple. That would be your opponent that you're talking to. You'll be able to mute local chat because maybe spamming, they're using profanity, etc. We'll obviously work on that. And then there'll be some other things that you can do. So, for example, like we don't call it like the chat feature; we call it the social feature. And the part of Arena that will be really cool is that you'll be able to move your drone around while you're doing your. I mean, not you will be. You can do it right now. Not you guys, but with the build that we have internally, you can move the drone around. We're just about to implement being able to show the emotes, which effectively is just like your drone putting up a hologram of their head to show some static 2D artwork. I love these things, and it's probably where I've spent the most money. I'm not a big spender on skins in games, but I love collecting emotes and dances and stuff like that because it allows you to interact with people. And if I'm playing Ben in a game of Ascendant mode and he beats me and then he throws up Atlas crying, then like hats off to him. You know what I mean? Like that is a valid use of your time and money to spend on that. There'll be some emotes that you'll get through achievements. So the one that I've always given as an example is, let's say in Illuvium Beyond, you complete the fire collection, then you will get the fire starter emote. And that will be something that, not many people have in the game unless they're like building out their collections. And you won't have to spend anything on that. I mean, obviously you have to spend on the Illuvium Beyond cards, but it'll just be this added bonus that you get with the game. And spam pinging these sort of things at people is such a satisfying way to troll people that I feel it'll become the lifeblood of a lot of the game, that you can have these unique things. And I'm really looking forward to it. So that's the majority of the chat features that we will have. I've glossed over like one particular thing that probably doesn't make a lot of sense to people. For anyone who's picked up on the part that didn't make sense and wants to learn more about how to make sense of it, too bad for you.
Okay, well, Crypto Womble's figured out his mic, so we'll go ahead and get him.
This time I figured it out. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yep, cool. Aaron, thanks for taking the time to jump on a call with us all. And my question relates to what you're talking about with Web3 gaming and being on the frontier of it.
Mm-hmm.
And what is it even on the team's radar in regards to like the mental health of the team? And what I mean by this is just like, the whole, the analogy of a stand, the spectators all in the stand, and we've all got our opinions on things. And if I was a team member putting my heart and soul into, what you guys have done is pretty amazing with and built Illuvium, and I see these comments throughout Twitter, and I'm thinking, man, if I was a team member reading some of this crap, I'd just be, at times I'd be quite despondent. And so I'm just wondering if it's even on the radar, or you guys just totally blow it all off and it's not even an issue. But just talking from a human being to a human being, it's like you can only take so much dog shit thrown at you before it starts to affect you. So I'm just wondering, like, is this kind of thing even on the radar for you? Right.
Yeah. So we, like, internally, we have spoken many times that we praise the team, obviously, when we get these big releases and celebrate it. I speak to a lot of the team, and the lead speak to all of the members all of the time. So from that perspective, I think that there's a good feel on the team that everyone is looking out for everyone else. It's one of the reasons why, like, I've not felt it to be like a big deal to remove someone from the team that I'm sure isn't of that same mentality. Because internally, it can also feel bad if you know that, like, you're putting out twice as much work as someone else, and so if someone else feels like they're sort of taking advantage of it, we're very, like, tough on making sure that people are doing a lot of work. And on one side, that can be good for mental health, because it means that that everyone on your team is looking out for you, and we have a really strong bond between a lot of the people on the team, where I think we're good there. From a, like, extra work perspective, it's obviously can be draining, and, like, sometimes people definitely need to take a little bit of a break and come back to it. That can be difficult on mental health. When it comes to, like, issues where, like, we're being attacked from outside, I will admit that I'm probably the worst person at handling that, because number one, those things don't really affect me. I don't know why. I just don't care about it. I don't look at Twitter, so I don't even really know what's going on from that perspective. And so I will admit that there's probably a lot more that I could do to sort of, like, be monitoring that and speaking to the team members about it individually. But it's not really my area. I'm definitely more robotic than a lot of people. So
I think it was Fraggy. I think it was Fraggy that mentioned the other day that often it's the complainers that have the loudest voice. And before I go, I just want to say, like, there are so many of us out there that just think that the Illuvium team are just absolute rock stars. And okay, you might be a little bit behind. And Rubik pointed something out. He's a guy that does a whole lot of posts on IMX, and he said to me, often the path with coding is that we take the wrong path, and you end up at a dead end, only to then go and restart again. And it's like, the more complex the problem, the more intertwined it is, and it's like, just thinking about that and thinking about what you guys are creating has been just, like, it's mind-blowing. And I just feel that often it's the loud voices that are saying all this, they're one narrative that they're stuck on. And it's just a concern I wanted to bring up, because I sit here reading it thinking, man, how do these guys put up with this shit? But anyway, that's enough.
I think that the good thing for a lot of our team is that maybe I misunderstand this. Maybe they look at it more than what I think is. My thought is that there's a lot of the team that is fairly oblivious to it, because they're just working so hard that they don't have a chance to look at that stuff. Then there's definitely some people that do fixate on that, and I wish they wouldn't, because it doesn't help us out too much. My solution to all of these things tends to just be, I'm gonna, like, work as hard as I can to get my part done so that it's easier for other people. When we started to have delays with Illuvium Beyond, I sat down with all of the team to figure out, like, hey, what is the issue here? And when we got to the crux of it, where it was like, we need ridiculously detailed requirements for all of these things before we can start, my response was, okay, well then we will create ridiculously detailed documents for it. And that's when a 50-page design document for Illuvium Beyond became a 400-page design document, right? And it just meant that a lot of the problems were solved and they could focus more on the technical side of things. And we're continuing on with that. There's not that much more that I can do outside of sort of like mentoring, and it's definitely not like a strong point of mine. So like internally, I just tell people to ignore it. Don't even look at Twitter. Like, what the hell is the point of it, et cetera, et cetera. But the other thing to remember is that the voices of people that are criticizing us are more than welcome to do it, and often right to criticize us, right? There's a lot of things to criticize us for. So I've never had a problem with that. When people do it in a respectful way, that's totally fine. When they do it in a disrespectful way, it's also fine. It's just like I will pay less attention to it, because it's hard to filter between the people who are just like super entitled and feel like the world owes them something, versus the people who have like legitimate grievances. I mean, there's a lot of people that have invested in Illuvium, and sometimes you look at it and you invested thinking that a timeline was a legal document or something, and like obviously it's not, but they might have thought that it was or whatever. And in those situations, it's perfectly valid for those people to be upset. I mean, I've had people be upset that sometimes they just send money into a contract which we don't control, and they're like, hey, give me back my money. We can't. You put your $20 into this contract, we don't control it, right? Like, there's no way to get it out. And people are upset by that, even though that's not our fault. It's like, I understand it. I understand people's frustration, and that's never been a problem. The times that I will become irate and really get my back up against the wall is when people suggest something that starts to make the core contributors on the team be fearful. Last week, we had someone suggest that they put in an IIP to steal money from like tokens from the founders. And as we've said from the beginning, right? If the project needs money, it's not going to be a problem. We will do whatever it takes. And obviously, Kieran has suggested he'll put out that IIP that makes that ironclad. But just the idea of that is stupid, and it's something that an IIP can't actually enforce, right? It would be like saying, I want Elon Musk to buy me a unicorn. Like, put in an IIP for it. Like, you can do it, but like, how do we action that? You can't action a contract that is locked, right? So a lot of contributors said, whoa, like, I know that they're saying this about you, but what's to stop them from taking my tokens? And I had to assure them they can't take them because they're locked in the Forge app, which we don't control, right? It would be ridiculous to have a protocol where we could just do whatever we want with it. That's not part of the process. I mean, imagine if someone put in an IIP and said, if you're staked right now, we can just take your liquidity. That would be ridiculous. You can write an IIP for it, but it's not going to do any good because we have no control over those things, because that's how they were built, right? They were audited that way to make it sure that you have these big investors and core contributors and everyone that can stake it, knowing that it's there and it's yours, and when it is unlocked, you can take it and all the rest of it. That's the part that I don't like, is when people sort of they look to do things, I guess, from a punitive way rather than, I guess, like just voicing their concerns. I don't even care if it's constructive criticism. You can say, Aaron's a dumbass, and that's fine, right? You can say that a million times, and in a lot of ways I am, and I'll agree with you on that, and we can move on. But get frustrated when people start to get fearful about, parts of the system that aren't problems, because it distracts them from the work that they're doing. And at the end of the day, the main reason why these people get frustrated is because they want to get an amazing product out as quick as possible, etc., etc. The things that they ask for are counterproductive a lot of the time. And I mean, that's the case with like everything. I mean, it was counterproductive to ask for a set of rails for the fuel pool. It's like asking us to spend more time building something for it to be a crappier system. And that happens 100 times a day, that I'll see a suggestion where it's like, hey, can you do this extra work to make your game worse? And that's what it is. It's people who don't really know, and they're perfectly valid, to come up with whatever criticisms they want. Just when people start to impact core contributors, like that's when you'll see me fight.
Yeah, thanks, Aaron. Appreciate all the work you guys do, man. You guys are legends.
Thank you.
Sweet. Thanks, Crypto Womble. All right. So we got some more written in questions. You guys are still free to raise your hands, but I'll start going through some more of these. One of the ones we have here, ChatGPT based one. Have much more of your efficiency increase, or has your efficiency increased since ChatGPT 4? Can you use this for things like bug detection and fixes, or does it help out in any way for the team essentially?
The very short answer to that is no. I'm sure that there are people on the team using it for basic plumbing and stuff like that. They need to set up some new environment, or they need to be able to expose some particular variable in infrastructure or whatever. If they're not using it, I would suggest it's definitely worthwhile to improve efficiency a little bit. When it comes to the bigger things, like there's only so many tokens that you can input into GPT-4 that it can pass, and it's just nowhere near enough to be able to get a context for what could possibly be causing a particular bug, right? Like the amount of code that is in the combat engine by itself is just like absolutely staggering. So the idea that you could, like, what would you do? Like paste in 50 separate classes and say, hey, can you find a problem with this? It's just not there yet. Where it is valuable is, as I'm sure you would know, it helps with announcements. It helps with like policing tone and getting things like that right for marketing messages. Very good at writing out just general documents. What I've found it really useful for, I'd say I'm probably the one on the team that uses it the most, I think. And I use it as a way to do a lot of the boilerplate for our requirements finding. So, for example, I might be building out some new feature or something like that from a requirements perspective, and I'll say, here's what I've got, here's what it's supposed to be able to do. Ask me as many questions as you can think of to try and figure out if there's some sort of flaw in what I'm doing, or if there's some extra things that I need. And it'll then throw back out at me, here's like 70 more features that should be part of it, or at least not so much features, but here's things that you should be documenting to make it clear for someone to build. And 50 of them are complete nonsense. 10 of them are correct, and 10 of them are things that I hadn't thought about, but should be part of it. And so it allows us to make our requirements a lot more detailed. We now do a really good job of it. I mean, I guess I could post into leaks like a single page that shows like a requirements document, so that people can see the level of detail that we go to about some of these things. I'd be happy to do that. I mean, it'd be boring as shit for 99% of people, but some people might find it to be a little bit interesting. And yeah, that helps the developers to be able to scope things out, because when they look at it, like in the past, one of the biggest issues that we've had is I know exactly what I want, and I know roughly how we need to build it. And like Johnny is been on the project since the beginning, so he's like really good at sort of pulling out that napkin and turning it into requirements. But not everyone is like that on the project. In fact, almost no one else on the project is able to do that. And so the better way of dealing with it is to just make it very, very explicit what everybody needs to build. When we started the project, I was a lot more explicit with certain things because I knew them very well. So the combat engine had a lot of work on it, whereas a lot of the web stuff that we did was, people just asking me questions and Johnny asking me questions and then them going and building it. Now that we've got 20, 30 people working on a project that are all in different time zones, you need to be very specific. You need to say, at this point, this can happen. These are the 3 things. This is where it goes, et cetera, et cetera. So it gets a lot more detailed. And there's just, like I said, there's just no one like Johnny who can do that. Johnny took the land sale IIP, and with the team, that's how the land sale was done, right? It was effectively no requirements documented besides that IIP. And the IIP had, I don't know, maybe 3 pages worth of stuff to it. Whereas Illuvium Beyond had about 50 pages worth of documents for it. And I thought that was enough. But the big pushback from the team was like 50 pages is not enough for us to communicate with each other and know exactly all the little ins and outs of it. So from about October through December, we sort of built that out to be something along the order of maybe 350 pages worth of documentation. That made it go a lot quicker. That's what the team have said that they require, so that's what we're doing. And I'm doing that for everything. I have to retroactively do it for a lot of projects that are going to get things improved in the future. For example, that was never done for the Illuvidex, and so I've got to do it. And that's probably the most difficult part of my job at the moment, is just day after day writing hundreds and hundreds of pages of documentation. So ChatGPT has been quite a bit of a help on that. It's not everything, but it certainly has allowed us to be, like, from the requirements perspective, Nick is now starting to do a lot of them, and I'm teaching the game designers how to do it in the right way. But even if we said there's roughly 4 people on the project that are doing those formal requirements, for a team as large as us and with the amount of projects that we have, it's a very hard thing to do, right? And it's not like I have other things on my plate to do as well, but I can't complain, because then when I give the project over to the team to build, what I'm asking them to build is ridiculously difficult as well. So it's a two-way street. It's tough for me. It's tough for them. When I ask the art team to build certain things, like I mentioned yesterday in chat, that what I asked Roger to do with the tier zeros was incredibly hard, right? Like just ridiculously hard to do, and he nailed it. Like just absolutely fucking nailed it, to the point where people don't even really understand what he did, and that's what's so cool about it. Everyone on the art team gets given these like monumental tasks to do, and they do them. So it would be a little bit rich for me to complain that, pre ChatGPT, that my life was tough, because part of my job is making it tough for all of these other people to make ridiculously cool things, and they're way more skilled than me, and they're doing a much more challenging thing than me. So the work that the team is doing is what inspires me. If we had a bunch of lazy people not doing much on the project, I'd find it a lot harder to do my job. But I find myself just like desperately trying to get things done for them, because they deserve it, and I owe them to make it easy. You know, like I was supposed to have something done by the end of today that someone else needs, otherwise they're going to start to be delayed, and I will do it. No matter how hard it is, I will get that done because that person is a champion and they deserve to not be delayed by me fumbling around being an idiot. So I've just got to figure it out, you know, and that's happened a lot of times. You know, you get put under pressure to support excellent people, you step up to the plate, you know, and I think that everyone on the team has felt that at some point or another, where they look around and they say, holy shit, everyone around me is like ridiculously talented. I got to lift my game.
That's how I feel every day, Aaron.
Me too, mate. Me too. Every single freaking day is exactly the same thing. I look at what people have done and I get it. I'm right there with you.
All right. I was gonna say I don't know exactly how much you use ChatGPT, but I do know that Jeremy loves it as well. Uh, he uh, he always shows me cool new stuff that that ChatGPT is doing. So
I'm not certain of whether I use it more than him, but I will say that I have 3 separate monthly subscriptions to it to overcome the limitations.
the limits.
So I could be wrong, but I'd say that I'm up there. Like,
Yeah, I think he's
outside of
only
just-
got one.
I mean, I could just use the API version of it now and to just pay on a per token basis. That might actually be better. But for the stuff that I do, it's a bit more conversational. If I was a dev, I would be almost certainly using the API to build something really cool.
Yep, it's definitely made some things a little bit quicker for me, at least.
And yes, I've seen Auto GPT Scoriox.
What is it? Oh, Auto GPT.
Yeah, look it up.
All right. Let's see here. Oh, let's bring Nijafe up. Get a question. Jaffe. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right. So my question is, has there been any consideration to give the like reward recipients the option to choose SILV versus ILV? Like for example, for the Illuvium Beyond rewards, I think if they choose the SILV2, then it would keep more money in the system instead of ILV, where they can't just spend it again.
Yep. So the original idea around that was obviously yes, that we wanted to do that. One of the problems with SILV2 is, I guess there's a leak that you would say, and it's technically not a leak. It all comes around. If people were logical, it wouldn't be a problem, but people are illogical, and therefore there is this extra way for people to use it. If there was no way possible for people to, you know, sell SRV2 into the fuel pool, it would be definitely the way that we would go about doing it. But the real answer is that we're not 100% set on exactly what we do with in-game yield. The first ones that we do will be very simple, but like the long-term plan of it, probably there's a little bit more automation around it, and just there'll be something to do, but we'll need to monitor it as the game progresses. It's definitely something that I can imagine there being a whole bunch of IIPs around as time goes on. Even things like there's only 1 million allocated to it, maybe in 3 years time, and there's none left, and we want to keep it in there. Maybe an IIP gets made that some particular transactions have a higher tax on them, which generates the ILV to give for in-game yields. I don't know what any of that would look like, but all I would say is it's a really valid question and will probably be in flux for the foreseeable future.
Do you think there'll be a way to possibly swap between SILV2, ILV, and ETH, like on the Illuvidex or on IMX, without having to pull it off, pay gas fees, and then make the swap?
For SILv2, absolutely fucking not. No, there will never be a way to do SILv2. I mean, technically, I can't say never because it's a token and it exists on IMX, and someone could spend a lot of time and research into learning how to build a pool about that on there, but I'd be petitioning for IMX to not make that pool live. So no, I hate the idea that there's any sort of access to SRV2 to taking it to anywhere but our system. Like the best way for SILv2 to have been made would have been for it to be claimed as not even an NFT, something that exists just inside of our systems that would be account bound. We couldn't do that because our account systems were a very long way away back then, but that would have been a version of SILv2 that would have been great. It would have been account bound, and yeah, maybe you would have had some people like selling their accounts and stuff like that. But there's a lot of inherent risk around that, and that would keep most people away from it. But the idea of having something official around SILv2 to keep inside of the ecosystem and sell and stuff like that definitely is not going to be something that we do. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you, Joe. Hey, thank you. Okay. Let's go to this. Kind of came up in the community earlier this week, but how about what is the incentive for people to play Illuvium Zero free to play? How can you keep players engaged, and how do we get them to come? How do we keep them playing? I think an idea came up this week about, I believe it was about free to play stuff. So,
I think it's hard for me to look at this question seriously because there's a very obvious answer, but I have to remember that we're in the Web3 space. And so sometimes people, I guess, forget that the whole reason why we're doing games in the first place is a game is just another word for utility, right? Crypto is, as a whole space, something that is desperately searching for utility, for it to be worthwhile and valid, right? Bitcoin is a great thing to have as far as like utility and stuff like that, but it's taken a big hit recently because this idea of it being digital gold and in a recession it goes up, sort of as it currently stands, proven to be like obviously wrong. Why? Because it just doesn't have spending power. Like you can't use it in the real world for any sort of meaningful things. I mean, there's obviously some, and there's plenty of stuff you can use it for, but for it to be recession proof, like gold, it has to be something that people are always willing to buy. And at the end of the day, the utility has to be, I can get stuff, right? If your Bitcoin can't be converted into stuff like a fridge or food or whatever, then it has less utility. I mean, this is just my opinions, but I think it's fairly obvious. What we should be looking to do is getting these cryptocurrencies to be something that is not tied to fiat, right? There should be a conversion between the two, but they need to be decoupled. It needs to be obvious that you can go to your grocer and pay a certain amount of Bitcoin or ETH or whatever it happens to be and buy a sausage, right? If you don't have that, then you don't get that sort of resiliency and that disconnection between recessions and stuff like that. I mean, obviously there would still be a problem with that, but as in like during recessions, people are going to lose a lot of money and it's going to take a dip, but you want it to be like so much so that you get a lot of capital being reallocated from like normal shares and stuff like that into things like crypto, right? Why are games a real key for that? Because games are utility, right? They're not a sausage, but they are a way of people saying my life is fine or good or bad or whatever, but it's better when I play a game. I have more fun. It's interesting. It's like going out, playing a game of football, on the streets with your friend. It's something that people do that adds value to their life. And if you can do it by paying for it in crypto, then you have instantly made the whole proposition of the blockchain much stronger, because you have actual real world tangible things that people want to do. So when people say like, why would anyone play, free to play version of Illuvium 0? That's nonsense. How could anyone ever play it? Because it's a game, and because games are supposed to be fun, right? No one ever made money out of SimCity. People still played it. People still paid to play it, right? They paid to play the free to play version of the game, right? That's effectively what happened. They went to the store and they spent $50 or whatever it was to buy the game, to go back and to be able to not earn any money out of it. Why? Because it's entertainment. It's something that makes our lives better. It's something that builds up our cognitive abilities, right? These are that's the reason why games exist, is because they tickle all of the base parts of what it means to be a human, and people are willing to pay for that. So why should there be a free to play version of Illuvium 0? So that people can look at the game and say, hey, that's really cool. That's something that I want to do. And if people want to then pay for a speed up inside of that game, even though they're getting no monetary reward for it, they're doing exactly the same that is done in a million other games. So the answer is, why would someone play that? Because it is fun. If you have this extra tier on top of that, which is, hey, after you get really good at it, maybe you want to go and spend money to buy a plot of land because you're really good and you can, get fuel out of it and stuff like that, and become a part of a bigger system. People will gradually move over to that, and that's obviously where we want them to be, but it doesn't need to be everyone. And there'll be a massive amount of people that just play the free to play version and then spend hundreds of dollars on speed ups and stuff like that without getting any monetary reward out of it, purely because it's a fun game. Is it as good as the current version of Cities Skylines? No, that game's been around for a very long time, and this is starting off as a much more simple game. But over time, it will become better, and it will start to connect into an overall universe. There'll be story elements around it. There'll be all sorts of things that go along with it. If we do what we want to do, then it no longer just becomes this standalone fun game. It becomes something that makes you part of a larger unity and a larger universe.
I will say that I just went and downloaded SimCity like last year again, like the latest one.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm a big SimCity fan, definitely.
It's one of the first games I ever played. I absolutely love SimCity. I know we're not going for quite as level of detail as that one to begin with, but try and stop us.
Yep. Okay, let's see here. What do we got? Scrubba was asking about public APIs. Will we have something in place or documentation for APIs before public beta?
Probably not. I think that while everything's in beta, there may be at some point, but before the start of public beta, there's definitely going to be more of a focus on building the game, right? Like, is it important to have a community build things around it? Yeah, absolutely it is. But because our game isn't sort of like a communal thing like Decentraland or something like that, it's a little bit less important. And even though it's something that absolutely will be done, I don't think we can prioritize it when people that would be doing that could be making the game better or getting it done quicker. So I would say probably not.
Okay. See here. And you guys are free to raise your hands still. I'm just going through the list of written questions we have in. Well, we don't have any hands up, so let's go ahead and okay, after PB3 and Overworld PB2 is the next stop for the two games open beta. I guess you kind of
No.
answered.
No,
you kinda-
there will be a, I don't know if we would call it PB4 or whatever we call it, but there would be one more internal test that would effectively be open beta, but without things being live and like connected to a non-testnet blockchain, right? So there'll be one more there where we like get people to try and exploit it when it's sort of, you know, still fake money type of a thing, just purely because if it gets exploited, it's like, imagine if someone finds a way to mint infinite RAM fires. It's very hard for us to go back after that and fix it. Like we can, but the whole point is that we want it to be as like decentralized and decoupled from us as possible. But once it goes live, we don't really want to do anything besides just building out game stuff. We don't want to be like changing things. We hated doing SRV to SRV2. So the idea that we would be, you know, removing a collection and saying, whoops, we stuffed up, sorry, everyone goes back to some previous state, you know, some snapshot, that would be like a really bad thing. It could be better than some other catastrophic thing, but the best thing is to just test it before it goes live. So there probably will be a PB4.
Yep, makes sense. Makes sense. Let's see here. Oh, here's one that we've heard a few times in the chat. You might not know this though, but do you know anything about when Grant's getting pied?
I have no idea. He said he would do it, and I don't know. Apart from me like going over to his house and doing it myself out of my control, he should.
A little bit of a leak
definitely
there.
do it. Yeah.
Well, you'd have to fly to like Dubai to do that now or something, right?
Not right now, but
Okay. Let's see here. Next up, do you know which regions will be ready after Brightland Steps and Abyssal Basin?
yes.
Not going to tell us though. Perfect.
No.
Works for me. Let's see here. We got one. I think he already came up, but we'll let him ask. We're already over time. Hugh Hayes.
What's up, guys? I'm back. I appreciate the time that you guys are spending. I just got a quick question. Seems like when we're in the overworld, is there going to be any multiplayer options or like player verse environment things going on, or is it just going to be gather materials and capture Illuvials? Is there going to be any other things we need to worry about, I guess, or makes the everything feel more alive?
So the eventual plan is to have there be multiplayer, but it needs to be done in a very special way. You know how there's been people who go to the point of murder because someone stole their loot and stuff like that. This would be like that on
Leroy
steroids.
Jenkins.
Yeah. So the idea is that the eventual goal is to have a multiplayer version of it, but we need to be very careful with that because you'd be sharing things with other people, and we just need to make sure that that's done very, very fairly. Before that would be combat with Illuvials in the overworld, which has always been the plan, but not something that could be part of the initial scope because it's obviously incredibly complex to do. Before that, there will be combat with some of the plants and possibly other things in the region that will make it a lot more dynamic. And there will be, it's not multiplayer, but it's not single. I don't know what you would call it, but there is something planned which I really, really want to get in for open beta because it is super important for the social aspect of the game. I don't want to talk about it much more because I already hinted at it with my comments on chat, but
Awesome.
I have
Well, I
talked about it.
appreciate everything that you said, man. Yeah, you've answered my question. I appreciate
Sick.
your time again, and I look forward to the future. And cheers, everyone. Have a great night.
Sweet. Thank
Thanks,
you.
man. Hey, almost. Sneaky, I'm gonna bring up Gang just because you've already asked quite. Oh, he put his. Oh, I invited him. Yep. Hey, how you doing?
Hey guys, how you going today?
Good,
Very
good.
well. Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Just got a quick question regarding Illuvium Zero. So I remember reading and listening about there's going to be special blueprints and stuff that I guess you could call it version 1 land people are going to be able to find and mint. Is this only going to be in season 1?
Yes.
And also, if you, I guess everyone's going to build at different rates depending on what tier of land that you have. Are there going to be multiple special blueprints that someone will be able to find?
So definitely there's a limited number that will be available, just purely because having everything available is a little bit risky when we're talking about something still being in an alpha state. But we do want to get that connection to the blockchain. So there'll be some things that you can build. You'll build them at different rates. It will mean that, the major selling point of the land is not quite there. Of like higher tier land is not quite there because you can't generate the fuel just yet. But you will have a region that is planned out, and you'll be able to see what's the best way to maximize different tiers and stuff like that. It's not as good as saying, hey, if you're tier 4, you're going to get this amazing extra experience compared to someone who's tier 1. But that's just the nature of having everything be reset when we go to launch live.
Okay, as there obviously not a specific date for season 1 starting, but I'm assuming it's going to be in the next few months.
I mean, we wanted season 1 to be underway already. It's just that we have run into a few snags. But as soon as we fix them up, season 1 will go out. Well, the reason why we're limiting it is purely for that reason. We can't have there be like complete chaos with the build and exploits, but as long as we can have it be reasonably secure, then it'll be okay for launch. So we're very close to season 1.
Awesome. Thanks for that. I bought an awesome 4080 new PC. I love playing the Overworld, and oh man, it's beautiful. I love showing people too. So can't wait to play it. Thanks
Very
heaps.
pretty game, and
Oh man, there's nothing like it, especially when you're out there making money too. It's a good one to be able to tell the wife. You know what I mean?
Abyssal Basin to me, even though it's meant to be like the ugly region, looks just gorgeous. Like I love it.
I bought Abyssal Basin land just for that reason, man. I think it's going to look amazing too. So thank you.
Yep, no problems. Thanks for your question.
Thank you.
Cheers,
Yes, sir. Okay, Sneaky Poke. Sneaky Poke.
Hey again. Thanks for question. Will wild alluvial levels in the overworld be restrictive? So, like, if I enter a stage 3 on day 1 of open beta, will they be too high level for my team? That makes sense.
The game won't sort of take into account time when determining what the level of your opponents is. It will take into account time when it comes to rarity, because we have a bonding curve that sort of compares all of the weights of all of them over time. So if something is super like more sought after, it will become harder and harder to spot. But levels will not. They'll be on a steady system, which will mean that when you first go into the game, even if you want to spend money, you're probably better off doing either like a tier, like a stage 0 run or a stage 1, right? So you go in there first, you're level 1 ranger, you've got no items, and then you pay to do stage 3 travel. Is going to be really bad for you, and we're going to put a lot of warnings on that to let people know that like this is bad. This is like the equivalent would be, you know, you're a little kid and you've got to capture a packet of cards, but your pack of cards weighs 500 kilos. It's just going to smash into your face and crush you, and you're not going to catch anything, right? So you got to catch the normal packs and build yourself up until you become some big beefy dude who can catch 500 kilos, right? So there will be some restrictions. I don't think we'll make it 100%. I think that it would probably be not ideal to just tell someone, hey, we know better than you, you can't do stage 3 travel. But it could even be something where if it becomes a problem, we either restrict it or we say that you can only do it after you get to a certain level or something like that. The reason why it's not the end of the world is because some person can spend a lot of money to buy your really rare tier 5 shards. And then when they go into a stage 3 region, if they're pretty smart and they've got a couple of things, it could be the case that they win the battle and they can capture it and they can sort of bootstrap their process. And to do that bootstrapping, they're just spending a ton of money. And the reason why that's okay is because they'd be spending a ton of money on the Illuvidex by buying it off of other players. So I don't want to be too restrictive with it, but your fear of like getting wrecked is something that we're looking at too, for sure.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, Sneaky Poke. Let's see. We got one that goes back a little bit to APIs. How about, will you make an API like allowed for external wager sites to access for match history and stats?
Not
Yeah.
specifically for wagering, but there will be APIs. But as I said, it's not super high priority. It's definitely something that is needed. The point is that anyone doing that sort of stuff is not building something internally. And this is the sort of thing that's like Nintendo doesn't do any of those sort of things because it like takes away from the time of doing it. They don't have to build any of the blockchain stuff. And so, you know, when someone says there's a team of, 500 people working on Breath of the Wild for 6 years, like we've got a team of over 100 people, but there's a decent number of them that are having to build out stuff outside of our systems. And so it just does mean that there's less manpower working on specific things. And we don't want to limit that manpower by as much, especially for things that are not considered essential.
Yep. Agreed. We got one from, I guess Taryn brought it up for some community members, but is there any sort of timeline you see on the level system being implemented? I mean, I know you already mentioned that it wouldn't be in the next beta, but has it started being developed and all of that?
Yeah. We've managed to find a few people to work on the team that don't hate crypto. And that means that we've got a little bit more capacity on the dev side than we did previously. So a lot of these things are being worked on. The leveling system is a fairly simple thing to implement, but because it's so intrinsically linked to balance, one of the traps of doing it really early is you start to balance the game around that, and then you change that, or you change the balance of the game and the other one goes out of whack. And because there's so many things in flux with the combat and stuff like that, the value that a ramfire gives you, how many mastery points, etc. Because of all of that, I think it's better to do the leveling system a little bit more late in the piece, because at that point it becomes a lot simpler once you've got a little bit more stability with everything else.
Good deal. Okay, what else do we got? So what will the pace of updates be when PvP goes live? Essentially wondering, community feedback, like how fast will you be able to implement changes and feedback?
Yeah, I mean, we get that all the time where people say, why aren't there isn't there an update on Arena every 2 weeks?" Because we want to have a stable branch for you, and then the branch that we're building all of the features on is inherently unstable for a long time after that, because we're building features. We're building huge features that can change lots of things. So it's never been the case that in the private betas that we are going to just be updating you every week with different things. It would either be completely wasted when it comes to like balance changes and stuff that are never going to be used at the final version of the game, or you would just end up with a lot of broken things, right? So I think people just have to be a little bit patient. I know that everyone wants the new shiny thing every couple of weeks, but prior to open beta, the pace of updates is always going to be a lot slower, because it's going to include things like integrating another, I don't know, like 14 lines of Illuvials. There's a lot that goes into that, right? There's features that need to be built, there's optimizations that need to be done, et cetera, et cetera. Once it's live, the pace at which we add features to the game, each individual game, is just massively slower, right? Which means that then we can do updates, because all they are is just text files that say what the value of Ramfire is, or how many stacks of water do you need to get to this particular threshold. All of that needs to be probably on a 2-week timer. I think that's a good cadence, and that's what we plan to do. But while we're going from building out survival to ascendant, don't expect us to give you 14 updates on survival in the meantime. Is it slower than what we wanted? Yes. I've already given a lot of reasons today as to why. Illuvium Beyond definitely took a lot of the team, not the specific game team, but teams that could have been building things for PvP away from it. And the other thing to remember is that that didn't stop the Ascendant mode people from doing what they're doing, right? They are one of the strongest teams that we have in the whole organization. There's not a huge amount of people working on Arena as a whole. There's obviously a lot of artists that do various bits and pieces for it, and a lot of tech artists. But for devs, it's a very small team, right? And they smash out features. So many simulation features have gone out in the last 6 months, so many bug fixes, so many new things that needed to go, like proximity triggering and synergy triggering, and the new targeting system, new synergy system, optimizations, the visualization has improved. There's just like a massive amount of stuff, a lot of which players don't really see, but they're working as hard as they can. So all it means is that the original plan for the game was, when we launched live, we would have half of the 150 Illuvials. Now it is almost certain that when we go live, we will have all of the, which was always going to be the better experience, but it was going to be like, we were going to be art limited, but with the dev side just being a lot slower than what we thought that it was going to be.
Dog?
Sorry about that.
Dog or child?
With the art side being, different than what we thought it was going to be. Like dev has taken a bit longer, and that's just meant that the dev team has to like finish off their things while the art team continues to like keep trucking along, and it means that the game will be a lot more balanced when it goes live.
Nice. We're almost through most of these questions. Aaron, you've done amazing. This one is I remember this being a very old topic. So I think it's kind of a good one, but I didn't see where you mentioned it lately. But somebody said that you mentioned a token split, and what were the reasons for this? And
I've wanted to do a token split since before we needed to do a token split. The reasons are pretty basic. People are stupid. That's the main reason.
I remember championing against it way back when we had this conversation. But
being against it?
yeah.
Fair enough.
But
I mean,
but that was my reasoning, was that people are just being stupid, basically.
Oh, right. Yeah. I mean, if the answer is like, why would I do this just to placate stupid people? I get it, but we live in the world that we live in, right? Like, if people really love something that you think is dumb, like, just get over it. That's it. Like, so the fact of the matter is that people look at our token price and they say $60, that's expensive, right? When it was 100 or 200 or 1,000, it's just, oh my God, it's too expensive, right? I think the only one that's been able to overcome that is Bitcoin, and that's after like a very, very long period of time. But the idea is, I guess we were supposed to have a situation. Sorry, just 1 second.
No problem. Yeah, I was only against it on the fact that I wanted people to learn what market cap meant.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, me too, right? Me 100%. But like, I mean, like, I guess why teach people if you don't need to? But the point is, we were supposed to have like a deflationary token that people were going to be like, wow, there's only 10 million, others have 1 billion. And then it's like, well, not only do they have 10 million, but it can go as low as 7 million. Like, oh my God, that's like so incredibly crazy. The majority of the pressure is, I have no idea what 7 million versus 1 billion means. All I know is that if I spend $100, I want to get 1 million of something rather than getting, one of something. So there's that, but then also a token split, whatever you want to call it, while it's a bit annoying, would give us the opportunity after SILv2 claiming is completed to get us to like a round number, which I always like. So we could divide by whatever our token price is times by 1 billion, and then we would have exactly 1 billion tokens. Sorry, our token app.
And then you're going to get a bunch of people saying, why did Illuvium rug? The price is only 1 penny now.
Yep. And then they'll look in their account and see that they have quite a lot of those pennies.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. It's not a high priority on my list. I just think that it would be a good thing to do. I understand the psychology of having a lower amount of tokens, and it should have done more for us than what it did, but who knows?
Yep. All right. Well, I think we'll do one last one, and then we'll try to wrap this up. This one is based around Governance V2, which is coming up very shortly. How do you balance the importance of having experienced council members in their respected fields with the potential value of bringing on individuals who may be less experienced but demonstrate a deep passion for DAO?
I guess the answer is eventually to have people that are both. That would be the ultimate outcome, is to have people that are like very experienced in the world of business, game development, that sort of stuff, and then also just happen to be passionate about the sort of things that we're doing. Until then, the community will keep on voting for who they feel are the best. I think that in general, the votes have been pretty good. Like, I mean, I don't think there's that many people that like voting for ridiculous people. So I don't know. I mean, I'm a token holder. Other people are token holders. They vote on things and they do what they want. There's always the fear that there could be some like big problem where if a hostile council took over, then they could just put an IIP and remove me. But so be it. Like that's the nature of the beast. If you don't do it, then you're building something that is just not quite as cool as what it could be. We got to go for the coolest thing possible and the most innovative. If that means that there's risk of my job or anyone else's job, or that people make bad decisions in the interim, well.
I mean, I will say that I've seen the council develop since the beginning, and I think I think in general, I think the bear market has helped, like weed out individuals that don't care as much. So at least that's getting to a better point. And then as we
Yeah.
get bigger, I think it'll, bring in more people.
My biggest gripe early on was having people on the council that were there for their own selfish reasons, and that really affected me. But I just had too many other things going on, so it wasn't something that I could spend a lot of time dealing with, nor would it have made like very good optics for me to be like attacking our council. So let it ride and work out that eventually people will sort of weed those individuals out, and I think they've done that.
Yep. All righty. Well, we're a little over 2.5 hours.
Jesus.
Yeah. It went quickly though, and at least in my head. But yeah, I think we're good to go. Unless you have anything else you want to say, Aaron.
No, I think that's definitely enough for me.
Time to get back to work.
I yesterday is like one of my longest meeting days, so I went from 8 till 11 with not many breaks, a lot of meetings in there, so my voice was already a little bit sore. I've just come off of a 2-week period where I was just sort of like working behind the scenes, not much interaction with the team, try and build out these different products that we need to get done. So I'm maybe not a little bit, I'm not very experienced with talking at the moment, and yeah, it's affecting me at the end of this week. But I'm moving on to a new cadence where I'll spend like a week doing the meetings and then a week just head down and like delivering stuff. Our team has gotten a bit smaller over the last 3 to 6 months, and that's put a few more, yes, responsibilities on my back, and it just means that I have to get in there and just do the work and get it done. But
Well,
the
we
rest of the team.
appreciate you.
No complaints
Yeah,
from me.
we appreciate you and the team, and yeah, we'll let you get back to not talking then.
Oh, it's gonna be great not talking. I'm gonna be the best not talker you've ever seen.
Alrighty. Well, thank you everybody for coming. We appreciate it. I hope most, if not all, of your questions got answered. This is recorded. Thank you, Taryn, for doing that, and I'm sure it's done well, unlike my recordings. And it will be posted as soon as possible. And then, yeah, we will see you guys soon.